The Arab world is mostly identified with Islam, and for good reason. Islam was a catalyst of the biggest expansion of the Arabic people in history. It paved the way for the establishment of arguably the most powerful empire of its time, the Islamic Caliphate, which at its zenith ranged from Spain and North Africa in the west to Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent in the east. The Caliphate managed to be one of the most dominant political, military, scientific, and cultural centers of the world for several centuries, while the religion of Islam remains one of the most important political and societal forces globally. But what was there before Islam? How did Arab people live, rule themselves? What did they believe in? Welcome to our video on Arabia before Islam. Pre-Islamic Arabia was mostly a nomadic society, inhabited by constantly moving tribal units. These Bedouin tribes, some of which maintain their traditional nomadic lifestyle to this day, had been the most significant political unit of the Arabian Peninsula, with constantly shifting alliances, never-ending warfare, and rare occurrences of organized and centralized statehood. These tribes placed heavy emphasis on kin-related groups and families, and would roam through the deserts with their livestock, mainly comprising of sheep, goats, and camels, living in tents with their immediate family members. The tribal leaders enforced unwritten rules of the Bedouin society in the tribe. Bedouin tribes were patriarchal, as inheritance passed to male offspring, and women could not inherit property and were virtually rightless, as they could be seized in tribal conflicts as a spoil of war, and the Bedouin laws allowed the men to marry their captives. The number of women a man could marry was not fixed. When a man died, his son inherited all his wives, except his own mother. Women in tribal Arabia had little say in their marriages, as they would often be arranged between a man and his future wife's family, and the family would receive property like camels or horses in exchange for the bride. There were also cases of killing female infants, as the Muslim holy book the Quran mentions that the Arabs of the period of ignorance, called Jahiliyyah, would bury their daughters alive. The Bedouin men often considered women an economic burden and a potential source of embarrassment, as the capture of women of the tribe by hostile tribes was considered humiliating in the conservative Bedouin society. Under the circumstances of lack of centralized states, with rare exceptions, there were no written laws, courts, or law enforcement of any kind to protect the population. Thus, the principal purpose of a Bedouin tribe was to protect its members. Vengeance was sought for the killing of a tribe member by another tribe, which led to virtually constant warfare and conflict. Protecting your tribe and avenging your kin was a high honor. Harsh living conditions of the Arabian Peninsula further enhanced the tribal system and sense of identity within a tribe, as often their protection and economic cooperation was the difference between death and survival. French historian Maxime Redonçon states that the free Arabs were bound by no written code of law, and no state existed to enforce its statutes with the backing of a police force. The only protection for a man's life was the certainty established by custom that it would be dearly bought. Blood for blood and a life for a life. The vendetta, tha'ar in Arabic, is one of the pillars of Bedouin society. Austrian historian Gustav E. von Grunebaum reiterated this and described the state of affairs in Arabia in the century before the rise of Islam as tribal guerrilla fighting, all against all. Tribes would fight against each other, attack and plunder caravans and sedentary settlements, as lawlessness was the law of the land in most of Arabia. Caravans and sedentary settlements would pay tribute to the raiding Bedouin tribes to avoid their attacks. While most of the tribes in Arabia went on with their nomadic lifestyle, some managed to gain influence over certain territories and switched to a sedentary life. Mecca was practically ruled by the skilled merchants of the Quraysh tribe that took control of the city sometime in the 5th century, while Yathrib, which was later named Medina, was dominated by the Arab tribes of Aus and Khazraj, and the Jewish tribes Natir, Kenuka, and Qurayza. While the nomadic Bedouins viewed sedentary life with contempt and thought of the town dwellers as a nation of shopkeepers, the emergence of cities like Mecca was the primary cause of the dawn of the common Arab identity in the pre-Islamic period.